A veritable storm has erupted in trade relations between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. March 4, 2025 marked the dawn of a new era in U.S.-Canada relations when the United States unexpectedly imposed tariffs, prompting an immediate reaction from its northern neighbor. As of March 6, 2025, the economic landscape of North America has been reshaped by the imposition of tariffs and the ensuing diplomatic maneuvers. On March 4, 2025, the U.S. President announced a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, citing insufficient measures to curb the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Additionally, a 10% tariff was imposed on Canadian energy exports, including oil and natural gas. In response, Canada immediately announced a 25% tariff on $30 billion worth of American goods, with plans to extend these measures to an additional $125 billion in the coming weeks. The Canadian Prime Minister condemned the U.S. tariffs as unjustified and stated that Canada's retaliatory measures would remain in effect until the U.S. tariffs were lifted. Furthermore, Canada requested consultations with the United States at the World Trade Organization regarding these unwarranted tariffs, marking the first step in the WTO dispute resolution process. Following tense negotiations between the President of the United States and the newly elected President of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, Washington conceded. The White House announced a temporary suspension of the 25% tariffs covering a significant portion of Mexican imports. This move, effective until April 2, acknowledged the growing efforts of the southern neighbor to combat illegal immigration and transnational drug trafficking, particularly the disruption of supply routes for deadly fentanyl. President Sheinbaum, in turn, expressed cautious gratitude for the demonstrated cooperation, emphasizing Mexico's unwavering commitment to strengthening border security and managing migration flows. However, while a glimmer of hope emerged in relations with Mexico, storm clouds gathered over the U.S.-Canada border. Washington's tariff policy toward Ottawa remains steadfast, triggering an unprecedented reaction from its northern neighbor. The Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, announced the imposition of a 25% tariff on electricity exports to the United States, effective Monday, March 10, 2025. This measure will undoubtedly affect 1.5 million American households and businesses in states critically dependent on energy supplies from Ontario, such as Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. Premier Ford, known for his directness, made it clear that Ontario is prepared for further escalation of the conflict, stating, "I will not hesitate to increase the surcharge or, if necessary, completely cut off electricity supplies." Such a move would undoubtedly be an unprecedented act of economic pressure in relations between two of the closest allies. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is demonstrating a determined stance in response to the United States' protectionist measures, not ruling out even the most radical steps. In particular, the possibility of halting electricity exports to a number of key American states is being considered. This hard line is a response to the Trump administration's decision to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods and a 10% tariff on energy. These measures, according to the Canadian side, could significantly impact vital sectors of the economy, such as automotive and steel, as well as lead to higher retail prices. At a press conference, Premier Ford reaffirmed his firm position, warning of Ontario's readiness to suspend electricity supplies to states critically dependent on Canadian imports. New York, Michigan, and Minnesota were among those mentioned. "If they want to destroy Ontario, I am ready to go all the way up to cutting off their electricity," he said, accompanying his words with an expressive smile. This tough rhetoric underscores the seriousness of the moment as Canada prepares for the potential economic consequences of the White House's trade policies. However, Ontario does not intend to limit itself to the energy issue alone. Other retaliatory measures are being considered. In particular, a proposal has been made to introduce an additional charge for each megawatt of electricity supplied to the United States, which would automatically increase costs for American consumers and businesses. In addition, there has been a threat to terminate a $100 million contract with Elon Musk's company, Starlink. As another symbolic gesture, it has been suggested that all American alcoholic beverages be removed from stores owned by the Liquor Control Board of Ontario if the announced tariffs are implemented. The economic battles unleashed by the Trump tariffs are casting an ominous shadow over Canada, where analysts are predicting job losses and soaring prices. Ontario, the country's industrial heartland, is particularly vulnerable, with every factory and workshop feeling the breath of the impending storm. The province's progressive conservative government, anticipating difficult times, has proactively allocated over $40 billion in emergency economic assistance. This impressive arsenal includes a $5 billion Protecting Ontario Fund, tax holidays, wage subsidies, and direct support to municipalities. This proactive financial shield underscores the seriousness of the trade dispute and its potentially devastating consequences for businesses and workers across the province. Despite all the preparations, Premier Ford acknowledges that the future is hazy and unpredictable. "We don't know what tomorrow will bring," he stated. "I'm not even sure President Trump knows what tomorrow will bring." These words encapsulate the uncertainty surrounding U.S. trade policy under Trump. Business leaders on both sides of the border are holding their breath, awaiting the official imposition of tariffs. The Canadian federal government has also declared its readiness to respond in kind. Ford supports a strategy of mirror measures where every U.S. trade action will be met with an equivalent counterstrike. While specific tariffs at the provincial level have not yet been announced, Ontario's readiness for decisive action sends a clear signal: in the event of escalation, the province will not stand idly by. Charlie Angus, a prominent member of the Canadian Parliament, makes no secret of his disagreement with the trade policies of the United States under President Donald Trump. His position is particularly critical of statements concerning the economic relations between the two countries. In a recent address to the nation, Angus called on Canadians to show solidarity and boycott goods manufactured in the U.S. in response to tariff measures initiated by the Trump administration. He emphasized the need to strengthen domestic businesses and reduce dependence on American imports. This call to action reflects his unwavering commitment to protecting Canada's economic interests amid escalating tensions in trade relations with its southern neighbor. Furthermore, Angus has expressed strong opposition to President Trump's repeated suggestions of a possible merger of Canada with the United States as the 51st state. He categorically rejected such ideas, emphasizing the inviolability of Canada's sovereignty and independence. In a recent interview, Angus stated that Canada is a proud nation with a unique identity, and any proposals that call its sovereignty into question are unacceptable. As a sign of his opposition to Trump's policies, Angus initiated a parliamentary petition calling on the Canadian government to ban President Trump from entering the country to attend the upcoming G7 summit in June. This move is further evidence of his disapproval of the American leader's policies and rhetoric towards Canada. Despite this, some experienced diplomats have expressed concern that excluding Trump from the summit could negatively impact the unity and effectiveness of the G7, highlighting the complexity and multifaceted nature of international diplomacy. The United States, as one of the world's leading economies, relies heavily on imports in strategically important sectors that underpin its continued growth and stability. Global trade is firmly woven into the fabric of the American economy, meeting its needs for energy resources, raw materials, food, beverages, and skilled labor. However, with the rise of President Donald Trump and his America First policies, these established trade relationships have been put to the test. The Trump administration, seeking to support domestic manufacturers, has implemented tariffs and trade restrictions affecting both allies and competitors, including Canada, the European Union, and China. Such policies, while aimed at protecting American industry and appealing to nationalist sentiments, often fail to account for the complex structure of global supply chains that have evolved over decades of globalization. The United States imports not only consumer goods but also vital resources such as crude oil, rare earth minerals, electricity, and other materials necessary to sustain industrial and technological advancement. Moreover, the international exchange of expertise plays a key role in maintaining the country's leading position in innovation and scientific research. In response to the Trump administration's protectionist tariffs, Canada is developing a comprehensive set of countermeasures that go far beyond traditional trade sanctions. One of the most discussed options is to limit exports of oil and electricity to the United States, which could trigger serious disruptions in energy supplies. Given Canada's key role in ensuring U.S. energy security, such a move could have far-reaching consequences, especially for industries critically dependent on a stable energy supply. In addition, Ottawa is considering imposing restrictions on the export of rare earth elements and natural gas, which are of strategic importance to a number of sectors, from the defense industry to renewable energy. In 2024, U.S. energy imports from Canada reached an impressive $19.85 billion, making its northern neighbor the largest supplier of energy resources to the American economy. This includes 1.46 billion barrels of crude oil worth a total of $16.8 billion as well as 271 billion cubic feet of natural gas worth $10.8 billion. In addition, the U.S. imported 37 terawatt-hours of electricity worth $1.85 billion and 10 million pounds of uranium worth $0.4 billion. It is easy to see that crude oil accounts for the dominant share of energy imports, which further underscores Canada's exceptional importance to the energy stability of the United States. Canada, seeking to reduce its dependence on the U.S. market, is taking active steps to diversify its oil export flows, turning its attention to the dynamically developing Far East, including China and Japan. This strategic maneuver has become particularly relevant in the face of protracted trade disputes and the prospect of new U.S. tariffs. The completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline modernization in early 2024 was a landmark event, opening a new chapter in the history of the Canadian oil industry. This infrastructure project, linking the oil-rich province of Alberta to the Pacific coast, has made it possible to direct Canadian oil to Asian countries such as China, Japan, and South Korea. In September 2024, refineries in Japan and South Korea, as well as a refinery in Brunei, received shipments of Canadian oil transported via the TMX pipeline for the first time. This moment marked an important milestone in the diversification of Canadian oil export routes. Statistics show an impressive increase in energy exports from Alberta to China. In the first 11 months of 2024, shipments reached $2 billion, 5 times higher than in the same period of the previous year. The lion's share of this growth was driven by crude oil exports, which increased from $0 to $1.8 billion. Japan has also established itself as a key destination for Canadian energy exports. In February 2025, Alberta's Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, emphasized the strategic importance of expanding its presence in the Japanese market, especially given the continued threat of U.S. tariffs. This strategy aims to ensure alternative sales channels for Canadian natural gas and crude oil, guaranteeing the stability and sustainability of the country's energy sector. Despite its status as an energy superpower, the United States of America continues to support energy imports to ensure a balanced supply to various regions and industrial sectors. The list of imported resources includes crude oil, natural gas, electricity, coal, and uranium. At the same time, Canada plays a key role in ensuring stable supplies of these strategically important resources to a number of states. In 2024, the average daily volume of crude oil imports into the United States was 6.1 million barrels. Remarkably, more than 4 million barrels per day, or 67% of the total, came from Canada. This impressive flow of raw materials is ensured by a developed system of main pipelines, such as Keystone XL and Enbridge Mainline, delivering oil to key refineries located in various states. In the heart of American industry, the state of Illinois, with its oil refining giants in Chicago and Joliet, receives significant flows of Canadian oil, turning it into vital products. Texas is not far behind, with heavy oil from the northern lands arriving via an extensive network of pipelines, including the infamous Keystone system. Minnesota, in turn, thrives on Enbridge Mainline, delivering black gold to refineries in St. Paul, while Michigan and Ohio fuel their Detroit plants with the same Canadian oil. This dependence on Canadian resources has far-reaching consequences. It is thanks to these supplies that the Midwest's refineries are able to produce gasoline, diesel, and other petroleum products without interruption, providing energy not only to their region but also to a significant portion of the country. But it is not only oil that connects the energy systems of the two countries. Imports of natural gas from Canada play an equally important role. In 2024, the United States imported a staggering 8.5 billion cubic feet of natural gas daily, with 7.4 billion cubic feet originating from Canada. This energy flow primarily serves the Midwest and Northeast, ensuring a stable supply for home heating, electricity generation, and industrial production. During the winter months, when heating demands soar, New York and New England, including states like Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, are particularly reliant on Canadian natural gas. Illinois and Michigan also utilize these supplies for residential heating and industrial processes, while states such as Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin use Canadian gas for power generation and to support their industries. These consistent supplies from Canada are a cornerstone of U.S. energy security, especially in regions with harsh climates. They provide the stability and reliability needed to sustain life and economies in the coldest states. Beyond traditional oil and gas, electricity imports from Canada play a vital role in the United States' energy balance, ensuring a stable energy supply. In 2024, electricity imports reached 38.92 terawatt-hours, with 95% of that volume coming from the northern neighbor. This cross-border energy trade is crucial for balancing regional supply and demand, particularly in states directly connected to the Canadian power grid. For example, New York benefits significantly from importing hydroelectric power from Quebec, reducing its reliance on fossil fuels and lowering its carbon footprint. Vermont and the entire New England region also depend on electricity supplies from Hydro-Quebec, which ensures grid stability and complements local renewable energy sources. Michigan, in turn, imports electricity from Ontario to cover peak loads during periods of high consumption. Minnesota and North Dakota also use Canadian hydropower to support their regional power systems, contributing to their reliability and sustainability. Despite a significant reduction in U.S. coal imports, Canada remains a supplier of this fuel, albeit in modest quantities. In 2024, total U.S. coal imports amounted to 4 million short tons, with supplies coming from Canada, Colombia, and Indonesia. Canadian coal is primarily used for industrial and energy needs in Michigan, while some imported coal goes to Minnesota for use in steel production. Small volumes of coal are also supplied to New England, but its role in the region's energy balance is steadily declining as cleaner, alternative energy sources are developed and implemented. Canada plays a crucial role in U.S. energy security by supplying uranium, which is essential for the operation of American nuclear power plants. In 2024, the United States imported 50 million pounds of this strategic resource, with Canada providing 20% of the total volume. This uranium fuels nuclear reactors in many states. These supplies are particularly important for Illinois, the leader in the number of nuclear power plants in the country. South and North Carolina also heavily rely on Canadian uranium to maintain the operation of their nuclear facilities. Pennsylvania, another major nuclear energy producer, benefits significantly from stable imports of this raw material. Tennessee, home to uranium processing and enrichment facilities, is also critically dependent on Canadian supplies to sustain nuclear energy production. Despite this significant reliance on Canadian energy resources, the Trump administration imposed tariffs on Canadian goods, citing the need to combat drug trafficking and illegal immigration. However, facts show that only a small fraction of illicit substances, particularly fentanyl, enters the U.S. from Canada. This discrepancy between the stated reasons and the actual data suggests that the administration's trade policy may have been driven by other, hidden motives. Officials explained the introduction of new tariffs as necessary to strengthen the fight against illegal immigration and drug trafficking, particularly the spread of fentanyl into the United States. However, statistical data show that only a small percentage of fentanyl entering the U.S. comes from Canada, about 0.2%, while the majority of the drug originates from China and Mexico. This calls into question the legitimacy of such large-scale tariff measures directed against Canadian goods. A more plausible motive for such actions is the desire to establish control over Canada's rich natural resources and strategically important territories. This country possesses significant reserves of minerals, oil, and natural gas, which are vital to the U.S. economy. Furthermore, Canada's geographical position provides strategic advantages in the Arctic region, which is becoming an area of increased geopolitical interest due to unexplored resources and new sea routes opening up as a result of melting glaciers. Annexing these territories could provide the United States with expanded access and control over these assets, which is entirely consistent with expansionist ambitions. National security may also play a significant role in this geopolitical equation. By annexing Canada, the United States would effectively eliminate its northern border, potentially simplifying defense strategy and creating a single, consolidated front in North America. This idea aligns with historical doctrines that have always emphasized the importance of continental security and may serve as a hidden motive for annexationist rhetoric emanating from the current administration. Domestically, the threat of annexation could be used as a political tool to strengthen nationalistic sentiment among the American electorate. By taking a tough stance on trade and border security, the administration may be attempting to bolster its political support, divert attention from domestic problems, and project an image of itself as a strong player on the international stage. Furthermore, it is possible that the threats of annexation are merely part of a tough negotiating strategy aimed at forcing Canada to make concessions on trade and other bilateral agreements. By suggesting such radical measures, the administration may be seeking to create leverage, forcing Canada to agree to less favorable terms in future negotiations. Analysts believe that these trade maneuvers may be part of a broader strategic game. There is a perception that customs tariffs are just one element of a large-scale strategy aimed at pushing Canada toward closer integration with the economic and geopolitical priorities of the United States. Reinforcing this hypothesis are President Trump's repeated statements about the possibility of Canada joining the U.S. as the 51st state, linking the prospect of lifting tariffs to the realization of such a scenario. Such initiatives generate widespread public resonance and require comprehensive analysis. Leave your comments and share your opinions on this issue. This concludes our broadcast. Thank you for your attention and participation. We sincerely hope that the presented material has been useful and interesting for you. If you share our views and want to support the further development of the channel, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with new publications. Your support means a lot to us. We offer you other videos from our channel available for viewing.